And the Pratts and Shirley.
Pray with me. Oh God, not my word, but your word. Not my voice, but your voice. May your word be heard today in this place. Amen. In today's Old Testament lectionary reading, God speaks to Moses through the burning bush. Now, the prior chapter tells the story of Moses from his birth until the time of this encounter with God. You may recall that Moses was raised by Pharaoh's daughter, and as such, Moses was accorded all the privileges of the Egyptian ruling family. But as a young man, his life of comfort was abruptly ended when he witnessed an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, and out of a sense of moral injustice, probably compounded by a sense of his identity as at heart a Hebrew, he killed the Egyptian and fell into disfavor with Pharaoh, and he fled Egypt for his life. Whereupon, after some time of wandering, he found himself in the land of Midian, in the words of the Bible, an alien in a strange land. But through good fortune and through good work, he eventually raised his station by assisting the priest of Midian and married the priest's daughter and started to raise a family. Life was once again good for Moses. This sets the stage for Moses' encounter with God in today's text. God tells Moses that God has chosen him to go to Pharaoh and to bring God's people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Moses comes up with all kinds of excuses for why this should not be the case, but God persists. And Moses agrees, and as we know, Moses' life of comfort and security is interrupted for the second and the final time. Moses will never again have a stable life. His destiny is to lead the Israelites out of Egypt into wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. And when that period of wandering is about to end, Moses knows that his time is up, and he ends his journey without ever having set foot in the promised land. Now, as I think about Moses' life, I am reminded that we all have likely experienced times in our own lives where things were relatively okay, maybe even good, and yet that ended. Something happened, maybe something of our own choosing, maybe something that we had nothing to do with, but that period of stability ends, and we are once again cast adrift and afloat on a new journey. I certainly have had maybe more than my share, or maybe an equal share of times in my life when all of a sudden everything changed. To name but two of the most significant, I have experienced a divorce with all that comes with that. I've also experienced a job layoff after years of presumed job security. And in each case, after a period of feeling relatively stable and at peace with where I was and who I was, I entered a period of wandering and a time of questioning and doubt. Like Moses, I have wandered in the wilderness. Now, today we finish our series of the journey into the quiet center. And as I think about that journey and what it might mean for both for the text of today's reading and also more broadly and deeply for my own life and perhaps yours as well, I think of the symbol that we've been using for the last 10 weeks, the labyrinth, as an apt metaphor for the life of Moses, or in fact, for any of our lives, for anyone's life journey. The labyrinth, with its many twists and turns, reminds me of the uncertainties of life, where we are often unsure about where we're going. We can't see anything except the next turn, and we have to have confidence that God will guide us. Now, on the surface, it seems that the goal of the labyrinth is to reach the center. And yet, is that really the goal? Is the goal of the labyrinth, is the goal of our life to reach some mythical center, a place where all will be fulfilled, all will be peace, all will be comfort? Well, no one stays in the center of a labyrinth, do they? After one finally reaches the center, you look around, maybe you assess your journey, but eventually you leave the center and you start a new journey. And I think that that's an apt metaphor for our own lives. Perhaps the purpose of the labyrinth is not to reach the center, but is to be found in the journey. Perhaps the purpose of Moses' life was not the times of being in the center for him, the times of comfort and security first in Egypt and then in Midian, but in the journeys that he undertook, and which, remember, he never reached the center again. If Moses had in fact stayed in the center, first in Egypt as a member of the Egyptian royalty, or next as a member of the priest's family in Midian, we never would have heard of him. In our own life journeys, we may reach places that seem like labyrinth centers, places to linger and rest. It may be tempting to stay in such a place, but I do not believe that God calls us to stay in the center. Instead, I believe that we are people called to be on a journey. We are people of the journey. In order to apply the lessons of Moses' life to our own lives, I also think it's important to recognize that not all journeys need to be epic. We don't have to have our lives completely turned upside down to make changes which make a difference and which add to the depth and meaning of our journeys. We can challenge ourselves to break out of a center which is no longer life-affirming without fleeing to Midian or being in the wilderness. An example from my own life is the prosaic act of jury duty. Now, in my own life, I've been called to jury duty several times, and I always looked upon it as an, oh no, why me? This is inconvenient. And the supervisors tended to agree. And so more often than not, I was able to go to my boss and get a letter affirming how important I was and sent it in, and I was excused from jury duty. The last time this happened to me, for one reason or another, when I got that letter, I thought, no, this is important. I surely am not as important as I think I am at work, and I can make this work. So I answered that letter, and in fact, I was called into a jury pool. Now, the circumstances were not that far unchanged. It was still an inconvenience. I knew that I have to work extra hours. I knew that at home it would cause an inconvenience, but there was something that said, it's right for you to do this. So I was in the jury pool, and I was sure that, being a banker, that for one reason or another that would disqualify me from serving on a jury. So I gave the best answers that I could to when I asked questions to show people how unfit I was to be a juror, but it didn't work. I was called to a jury in a federal civil case, a case that lasted 2 weeks, a case that went to the jury that deliberated 2 days, and we returned a verdict in favor of the plaintiff. I returned from that to work forever changed, not in a big way, but in a small but very important way. I had and I have new and everlasting respect for what the rule of law means. When I hear in recent weeks and months about grand juries and their job, and I always hear that grand juries are comprised of ordinary citizens. And that has new impact for me because as an ordinary citizen, I have served on a jury. And I understand now, more than ever before, that our system of governance in this country depends upon ordinary people. And ordinary people answering the call to serve their civic responsibilities as that which buttresses our judicial system. And what that has allowed me to do through all the times of strife and uncertainty, name-calling and polarization is allowed me to maintain a faith in the rule of law, or as was said in the words of Martin Luther King Jr., that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. So what about you? Where are you on your life journey? Are you walking the labyrinth right now, or do you feel you are at the center? Wherever you are, I hope you remain open to God's call, whatever that might be, and wherever that might take you. Amen. Now we have time for a couple of questions, so Rosemary will take the mic to anybody who